Alrighty, here I am again, George Mason in my little basement studio that I affectionately refer to as the Bear's Den. Because I'm like an old bear, grumpy, down here in my in my basement studio, and I kind of wanted to talk about something a little interesting today. A lot of times, people will have the idea that improvisation, if you want to get kind of wild and crazy and do some interesting stuff on a tune, that you have to have this color palette of chord changes to play over. And while that does make things interesting, okay, you can actually create your own color palette. Now, what I mean is this. And now hear me out on this. We're going to take a simple song. Let's look at something like "Happy Birthday." Okay. By the way, and if you aren't aware of this, and it's funny the first time I thought about it, and I went, ping, a little eureka moment. "Happy Birthday" is actually a waltz. But the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So I mean, it's actually a waltz. And I don't know why, for a long time, that never really occurred to me, but it is. Anyhow, all that aside, let's discuss the fact that it's let's look at it in the key of G. So it's it goes from G, D, D back to a G. And then you can call it G7 for the to make the change to C, like the G, D, G. So it's just G, C, and D. It's 3 chords. And you would say maybe a lot of folks would think, how am I going to improvise over that and really give it any color and make it interesting? Well, that kind of goes back to the fact that color in a chord, a lot of times it's based off the dominant. So the dominant being the 7th note of the scale of that chord. So if you're in the key of G playing a G chord. Now, remember this, that the chord change, the harmonization of the melody, which is the chord changes, right? Each chord change is like a little microcosm, okay? So as you're improvising, you're living within that chord change. You're playing things that work in that chord change, right? And you also want to play ideas that lead to the next chord change, that infer where you're going to go, right? That's also a really good idea. So keep that in the back of your mind as we're talking about this. So the first one's going to be a G chord, right? So a G chord is just G, B, and D. It's 1, 3, 5. It's a triad. Now, if you want to add color, you can add the dominant, which can be a major 7 or a dominant 7, which is, and all that means is it's flat at a half step. So, but when you're going to talk about extensions like 9s, 11s, and 13s, those are normally, it's just assumed when you hear G9 that you know that it's a dominant 9. If it's not a dominant 9, they will say G major 9, which means that the 7th has not been dropped a half step. And same thing with your 11 or your 13, right? So it's, if they don't say major 11 or major 13, if that's not said, then it's just assumed that it's going to be dominant. So just throwing that out there. Now, so I'm a melody instrument here, right? Now I can play chords, right? Because I can play as many as 4 notes in a chord if I, do some kind of thing and rake over because it's arched right there. The bridge is arched. As far as sustaining notes, you can only sustain 2, right? Because of the arching of the bridge. But this theory that we're going to talk about kind of works with any instrument. So it could be an instrument that can only play 1 note. It can be flute. It could be sax, trumpet, whatever you want to play. The rule applies. So the rhythm section is playing a G chord. They're playing something with G, B, and D in it. Now, if you want that chord to be a dominant, you can play the dominant in your scale patterns that you're playing. And since there's a global chord, there's the chord that each musician's playing. If they're all playing a G chord, it's just G, B, D. So it's a G chord. But if I go in there and I play an F natural, which is the dominant of G, all of a sudden, globally, as a group, we're playing a G dominant 7th chord, right? So I could be playing some little pattern like that, but now I want to play that F natural. And it's kind of bluesy sounding. I'll stick that in there. So now all of a sudden I've got globally a G7. Now what's neat about that is if I want to add a 9, which is just an A, now I've got a G9 chord, and it's a dominant because I got the A is 9, and you know your 10 would be D, and 11. I can add that. Now I've got G, I got F, I got C, so I got an 11. And then 13. Now if I don't want to play all those notes together as a chord, but I'm playing, you know. Patterns like that. Now I'm allowed, it's allowing me to kind of stretch outside the box a little bit and to play a lot more colors. Now you take something like Happy Birthday. Then it goes to the D chord, so like the G. C. G. D, which is D7. And back to G. So using those ideas, now you can go, well, I can get pretty sideways on that song. There you go. So some improvising on something simple like Happy Birthday. Now, the other thing I would tell you also is knowing the patterns that fit over those chord changes. You've got, because you know, the melodies have gaps around them. You got like, you know, this. You get some time right there before the next part starts. There's another long note, right? So you can do. And so if you've got technique enough to play a lot of notes and you can kind of shove them all into the cracks in between the chord changes, it kind of gives you, and it's because of where the melody gaps are, then you're able to do that. And if you can play the melody where you can swing it too, like, not real straight, but. Then that allows you to put both of those together. And You can add portions of the melody in to the improvisation, and you can just kind of work things all around like that and start making somewhat of a musical mulligan stew. And at the end of the whole thing, you've had some fun, and it's a good way to um, grow as an improviser, right? Because take something simple like that. Now, what I will also tell students quite often, I'll say that some of the most complicated songs out there, believe it or not, are the old standard Christmas songs. Not so much the new stuff, but if you go back and you get all those old songs like Sleigh Ride and that kind of stuff, White Christmas, and some of the ones that are the old Bing Crosby tunes, the old Andy Williams tunes, dig those up and start learning to play all those melodies, because those are difficult melodies to play. They're not super easy, right? And then they've got some nice chord changes in them, lots of just colorful changes that gives you a lot more room, a bigger color palette to stretch out on. So it's just something to think about today. I'm kind of throwing out some ideas because I'm always down here practicing. If I'm not working on a project for a client, what am I doing? I'm practicing, right? Because I just love to play. It's a lot of fun. All right, well, y'all have a good one, and signing off here from the Bears Den. Y'all have a good day.